Hello, I'm Debbie Bell-Hosking for Finextra. I'm talking to Madhur Jain of SunTec. Hello, Madhur.
Hi Debbie, how are you?
Very well, thank you. First question is, why should banks consider SunTec?
Debbie, simply put, right, all banks today are in a, what should I say, call it, are in a cusp where they either survive or they will perish given the challenges they are facing in the industry today. A fundamental aspect of this is how can they deliver better experiences to their clients. And when I speak of experience, I'm not just speaking of the UX or the UI, that the last mile journey, but the overall experience customers have at the banks, better service, better products, better propositions, and everything else. And fundamentally today, banks are significantly constrained in doing this because of their situation, their technology, their business model, and other similar areas. And Xelerate, that's the product from SunTech, fundamentally helps banks in accelerating this journey towards transforming themselves into becoming a true customer-centric bank. And that's why our clients whom we are working with and our prospects whom we are interacting with today are looking at very favorably at Xelerate to help them accelerate their journey as they transform themselves. And that's the simple answer why banks should consider SunTech.
And we're talking transformation, but how can banks use technology as a lever to reinvent and change their existing business models?
So see, today if you look at it, banks want to do a number of things. If you look at any bank's balance sheet, you will see, for example, customer centricity and customer experience as one of their fundamental strategy pillars. But moving from, let us say, a strategy to an execution is constrained by the technology they use. There is technology out there in the market today, which we've seen other industries use. So you look at a company like Facebook, which manages millions and millions of people on a very real-time basis and provides them the experience that they need. Or Amazon, which is able to provide products to their customers exactly in the way they need and give them the experience that the customers love. Banks can do it. They just need to use the technology available to enable them as long as they get their mind around what do they need to achieve.
So SunTech advocates this hollowing the core, and how can that benefit banks?
If you go back to the last question on how banks can use technology, and I spoke about the fact that banks are significantly constrained by their current technology, and fundamentally if I were to speak about it, it is their application landscape and within that specifically their core banking applications which are a roadblock to them transforming. They are spending money on their, should I say, channel space and the way they interact with the customers, millions of dollars. And I would also say that quite a few banks have made significant advances in the way they interact with their customers. But what finally happens, like I said, experience are not just about the last mile, experience are about the whole journey the bank has with their customers, the right product, the right experience, the right service, the right everything, right? That's what the customer expects. Now, when we speak about hollowing out the core, essentially because the constraint on the bank today is the core, what we are talking about is saying the core is meant to be a system of record, right? And over the years, it has become much more than what it is supposed to be. And unfortunately, while it has delivered additional capability, it has actually acted as a significant constraint to banks because they just does not have the agility in today's changing world. So what we are saying is banks need to look at a situation where anything which impacts the customer directly needs to move out of the core and sit, let's say, in a layer above the core by, in quotes, hollowing out the core. We are not talking about fundamentally altering the core in terms of technology making changes, but supplementing the core applications by building a solution or delivering a solution like Xelerate or a product like ours to be able to meet their goals.
Okay, so you mentioned Xelerate.
Yeah.
How can that simplify the digital transformation journey of a bank?
So I go back to my previous answers where I said the customer's experience is not just about the end experience which they see on their channel, but about getting the right product based on their needs, getting the right propositions based on the need, being treated transparently and fairly, getting the right price or the right benefits for what they are doing with their customers, with the banks. And these are the elements which banks are typically very bad at today, right? You would see that every bank says, I have this product to sell. Nobody is looking at saying, this is your problem. You have a lifestyle problem. You have a lifestyle goal. How will I help you achieve it? It's not the customer is not looking at a mortgage. A mortgage is just a need because the customer is looking to buy a house. So if banks are able to move away from that to delivering what the customers want, and hence something like Xelerate fundamentally alters that transformation journey by enabling banks to deliver these experiences which I was talking about. And that's where we are talking about why Xelerate for a digital transformation.
And picking up on that, how does that impact risk?
Significantly, right? If you looked at, let's say, 5-6 years ago, there were a number of banks which attempted large-scale core replacement programs, right? When they said everybody recognizes my core is my bottleneck. So what do? Banks said, okay, let me replace them. And then they discovered that this is a multi-$100 million cost, a significant amount of time, and a significant amount of risk. Why? From two angles. Because as soon as you touch the core, you will be directly impacting customer service and the risk of disruption in customer service. You saw banks in the UK over the last 4 to 6 years, how many times were their services disrupted, and all of them nearly went back to their core solutions. That's one part of the story. The second part of the story is reducing the risk by not fundamentally removing the core, because the core are by default core engines are very robust and do what they're supposed to be doing. And they are at the heart of how do they manage the regulatory aspects of what the banks do. Now, trying to replace the core means you are facing risk on all angles. The customer service disruption, regulatory risk, the cost and time angle also comes in. Now, moving into an approach where we are saying I'm going to supplement the core, I will restrict it to do what it's supposed to be originally doing, and building a layer on top which manages all my customer engagement capabilities, like giving them the right product, giving them need-based banking, pricing them properly, helping the bank be transparent and fair to their customers, and many more similar customer-driven capabilities, fundamentally alters the risk. And the other angle is, because Xelerate, for example, is built on new technology, what it means is this capability addition can be done incrementally, which means, of course, that the risk for the bank of the project itself is significantly reduced.
And thank you, Madhur. As we come to a close, could you clarify, Xelerate, what sort of banks are suited to it? Is there a scale in terms of region or size?
Fundamentally, the answer is, if I were to say, it's no. There is nothing which prevents any bank of any size operating in any customer segment to be using Xelerate. Yes, each of them have different drivers, right? For example, a corporate bank with a small number of customer set, but much more higher revenue through each customer, would have a separate set of challenges and a separate set of needs compared to a mass retail bank, where the need is far more about how do I automate, let's say, each customer's experience and still give them a unique experience, but at the same time I have to be bothered about scalability. Whereas for a corporate bank, taking back the same example, they have to be far more bothered about how do I personalize to the last mile the experience for the corporate customer. So different banks or different verticals. Even if I go beyond banks into the financial services space, like investment houses or capital market banks or capital market providers or correspondent banking businesses, each of them can use Xelerate in different manners. And we've seen this from our set of customers today. We have all of these varieties and more across all regions, across all the 3 major regions. You speak of the Americas, you speak of Europe, or you speak of Asia Pacific. Each region also faces different regulatory pressures, different business paradigms. And so the beauty of Xelerate is that it can adapt to each specific requirement for an individual organization, for the segment they are addressing, and in the regulatory and business paradigm they are operating in.
Madhur, thank you so much. It's been great chatting to you about your insight on digital transformation as well as Xelerate. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure, Debbie.